Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Okay. Now, Jared O'Meara, he's the Labour MP that defeated Nick Clegg in the Sheffield-Hallam seat at the general election. He's been in a lot of trouble since the website Guido Fawkes published details of lewd comments he had made many years ago, then more today from 2009, and then an allegation which we'll show you in a minute a little more recently. As we came on air, the Labour Party announced that Mr. O'Meara had been suspended. In technical terms, the Labour whip is withdrawn from him pending an investigation into what he's alleged to have said. And that will now go on, and he won't be covered by the Labour whip until that investigation is finished. Sophie Evans is a woman who told this programme yesterday that Mr. O'Meara had verbally abused her while on a night out with friends. This is a lot more recent than some of the other claims on the website. He strongly denies this. Joko asked Sophie what exactly he had said to her.
Some of the things aren't broadcastable, but there was some transphobic slurs in there, but he called me an ugly I just thought, wow, he's not a very nice man, and kind of just forgot about it. I knew that he was kind of involved in politics, but I had no idea at the time that he was running for MP for Sheffield-Hallam, which is my constituency.
So, the news this morning, Jared O'Meara, Labour MP, whip suspended from him, taken away while this investigation goes on. Labour should have done this from the start, shouldn't they?
Well, to be fair, the allegations and the information about what he'd said has only come out over the last couple of days, and actually Labour acted very, very swiftly. We said there needed to be an investigation. That's what's been put into place. Well, the suspension, as you said, has just been agreed as of now, and I think actually it's very important that we do have a proper investigation, find out exactly what's happened. Obviously, Jared O'Meara himself came to the PLP meeting, the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting on Monday night. He apologised, but an apology isn't enough. We need to have an investigation. That's the right thing to do. So I think this just shows it's been taken seriously by the party.
I understand that, but it is a Labour Party process that if somebody is being investigated, an MP, then you suspend them during the investigation. That didn't happen.
I'm not sure that that is necessarily always the case. I think the important thing is that
we have quite clear rules in the Labour Party, a clear process in the Labour Party. In this case, it's absolutely clear. We suspend and we investigate and we make a decision. A fellow Labour MP.
But about that specific person, perhaps, but generally the Labour Party will deal with these issues within the Labour Party's rules, which I don't think say you have to suspend an individual, but clearly the party's come to the decision. In this case, it's important and right to suspend him while the investigation goes on, and that's what should happen, because what he said was unacceptable. We need to find out whether these latest allegations were true as well, try and find out what's happened there and then take appropriate action.
Jared O'Meara was essentially chosen to stand against Nick Clegg in the last election by the NEC, of the Labour NEC. He was essentially forced onto the constituency. Did no one in the NEC vet him?
Well, I mean, as you will know, all candidates, certainly for the Labour Party, I think for most other parties as well, were chosen through an accelerated process. Normally, they would have been chosen for Labour by a vote of the members. That couldn't happen because it's not general election.
So the NEC chose them. Did the NEC not vet the candidates that they are essentially forcing onto the constituency?
There was a panel, certainly in my case, there was a panel that would have been formed from the NEC exactly, which would go through the different candidates. And I think part of the investigation is going to be finding out exactly how that process went.
Yeah, but was he not vetted? He had been a Labour candidate before. So this was the second time. So he was known to the Labour Party. It wasn't the constituency decision. It was the NEC's decision that he stand against Nick Clegg in Sheffield-Hallam. Did no one in Labour headquarters vet him?
Well, you're also required as a candidate to say if there's anything in your history that could cause embarrassment to the party. And I think it's important that people take that seriously.
So he must have said no.
Seriously. Well, I don't know about the circumstances.
Well, if he'd said yes, you surely would have let him run.
Well, I think that there's got to be a balance as well. You know, I think
if you had known he had said all these things, which are unrepeatable on daytime television, in fact, probably unrepeatable on late night TV too. If he'd said all these things, the homophobic, the sexist comments, now the racist comments about Spaniards and Danes, are you telling me that if you had known all that, he would still have been allowed to stand as a Labour candidate?
Well, it wouldn't have been my decision in the first place anyway, and I don't think as an elected politician it would have been right for me to choose. I think it's right that we have a more neutral process around this. Would your party have been
allowed him to stand?
But I would also say that around this, he initially, on Monday evening, he said that he was very embarrassed and ashamed about what he had said back then. He accepted it was wrong. He said he changed as a person. Obviously, we've had more recent allegations since. But I think there's another issue here, which is if you've got people who in the past have held views which are abhorrent, they're horrible, but if they now renounce those views, say they're ashamed of them, embarrassed of them, they're a different person, they now want to work to help those very people that they were being so horrible about before, should we say in every case we've got to turn our backs to them?
No, only when it's a Tory that says it. That's the Labour attitude.
Well,
when
no,
it's Tories, they should be hung, drawn and quarter. When it's Jared O'Mara, a fellow Labour MP, if you said, oh, he's on a journey. What exactly is the journey he's on?
Well, he's being investigated. I'm not saying this is the case with him necessarily. And actually, I've never been like that, to be fair. You know, if somebody's done something wrong in the past and they've renounced it and said that they regret that, they want to make right the wrongs that, you know, from the past, I think that's the right thing to do.
The most recent remarks involving, I think, Angelina Jolie and other, actually in some ways more horrendous than the previous ones, these were in 2009. He'd already been a Labour candidate by then.
Right, well, A, I haven't seen the most recent remarks, but secondly, there is an investigation that's going on within the Labour Party that will decide about his future within the party. I think that's the right thing to do. It's appropriate that we look at all of the evidence and then decide the way forward.
Mr. O'Mara denies the allegations made in the Daily Politics yesterday. At the moment, seems to be a he said, she said. We don't know how that will develop. The original ones are from 15 years ago. He's apologised. He was very young 15 years ago. Should he be allowed to apologise and get on with it?
You're asking me?
Yes.
I think if it just pertains to remarks he made as a young man, and he said he was going through a troublesome patch, I don't feel that these days we can necessarily condemn people out of hand. Never shall they ever represent people in Parliament for remarks they made at a young age. So I am sympathetic to the decision by the Labour Party not to suspend him straight away on that. I think the more recent allegations are more serious. Obviously, they need to be investigated, but the Sophie who was on the screen a few minutes ago seemed to be a very credible witness, and serious allegations to be answered.
Well, we shall see how the investigation goes.
More now on the suspension of the Labour Party MP Jared O'Mara and the controversy around a string of online comments. Let's go to Guardian columnist Owen Jones, who is joining us live. Hello to you. Owen, you did want to defend him, I'm sure. What was the tipping point for you?
Well, never to defend him. As soon as I heard his comments, I called them inexcusable and vile, which they were. I mean, my own view was that if this was a case of comments he made online 15 years ago, then he should be able to have at least an opportunity to show he'd changed, if he'd gone on a journey. But I'm afraid the pattern, the fact that we're talking about far more recent allegations, well, in terms of allegations of what he said to a woman earlier this year, but also online comments made much earlier than 15 years ago, showed it was untenable. So for my own view is, yes, of course, if people say very stupid or actually vile things, as he said, and they were vile 15 years ago, long before they were an MP, they should have an opportunity to say they've moved on and educated themselves, and to show in practice, maybe by working, in his case, with LGBT activists, women's activists and others, that they had gone on a journey. That it's absolutely indefensible, the fact that he's made such a whole range of just disgusting comments, and that is why Labour, given, you know, what's the point of the Labour Party if it doesn't take a stand against homophobia, sexism and misogyny, had absolutely no choice but to immediately suspend him, which they've done, thankfully.
And how far do you think that stand should go if it is proven that he did say what has been alleged that he said to in a nightclub to this lady?
Well, I mean, I know he strongly denied them, but I mean, the problem is there's been such a pattern of misogynistic things that he's said. So obviously, I think that just has to be investigated. I mean, when people say they're on a journey, I mean, Naz Shah is the Labour MP, and she posted anti-Semitic tropes online, which were absolutely outrageous, and she was suspended. What she then did over the course of the following months was to meet with representatives of the Jewish community and be educated, to go on a genuine journey, not just apologise. It's easy to apologise, anyone can do that, but to actually show an understanding of why she was wrong, why it was so offensive, and in doing so, help others who themselves have bigoted or racist or xenophobic views or whatever, to understand themselves and also hopefully go on that journey. Look, in terms of LGBT rights, as an example, because he made these terrible comments 15 years ago. I'm a gay man, so clearly, you know, homophobia is something I know personally damages LGBT people in terrible ways, often with life-lasting consequences. 15 years ago, millions more people than is the case today thought homosexuality was wrong. And what we've had is a whole series of personal journeys of millions of people in this country who have had their views challenged, changed because of LGBT people and activists educating them. That is a good thing. Look, I had, you know, back in 2005, somebody who stood for the Conservatives this year, didn't win, but if the polls had been right, he would have done. And he called, and I'm sorry to use this term on television, but he called me a left-wing faggot and said, this was 2005, said that homosexuality was unnatural and wrong. Now, I have to say, it's easy for partisan points that I could say, well, you know, and damn him and all the rest. But if I was genuinely convinced he'd gone on a journey over the last 12 years and had changed those views, I would welcome that, because the only way we're going to overcome bigotry and hatred in this country, which I'm afraid is an endemic problem, is to educate people and to bring people on those journeys.
Okay. But are you saying, OK, that's a different issue and one perhaps to discuss in more detail on another occasion. Hopefully you'll come back. But as far as Jared O'Mara is concerned, he can come back from this, is what you're saying. He just needs to be mea culpa and mean it.
No, as I've said, I think, I mean, unless he went on a very extensive journey over months and months and months and spent a huge amount of time with LGBT activists and women's groups and women's charities being educated, then of course he shouldn't come back. I don't think there should be any any easy comeback or turnaround for somebody who made such a pattern over a period of time of these sorts of comments.
Okay.
I mean, that's the point I'm trying to make, is that it is easy to apologise, it's easy to say sorry in these sorts of instances, but that isn't good enough. People have to show that they're going on genuine journeys and learning, because it's absolutely unacceptable and abhorrent, the stuff he said. I mean, it's disgusting what he said.
Absolutely. I thought you were making the comparison with the anti-Semitic reference and what that
but that happened over months.
Politician had managed to do over a period of months. Exactly. So what then does this mean for Labour in Sheffield Hallam?
Well, I think what happened in this particular case is a snap general election was called, obviously, which came out of nowhere. And in the case of Sheffield Hallam, given where the polling was at the time, I don't really think Labour thought they were going to win that seat from Nick Clegg, to be brutally honest with you. And I think it was just rushed in the sense that what should have happened is extensive vetting of candidates. You know, I know a lot of left-wing members of the Labour Party feel quite aggrieved because you have a compliance unit within the Labour Party, and that spent months trawling through the internet history of left-wing activists who might have retweeted something the Green Party said, or retweeted Caroline Lucas, the former leader of the Green Party, or previously expressed support for the Greens, and they got expelled from the Labour Party. So why wasn't it the case there was an extensive vetting process in place? Yes, I know there was a snap general election and it was all chaotic and all the rest at that time, but why wasn't there that extensive vetting process by the party machine, if you like, to go through those social media posts? That's the sort of thing that now needs to be acted on, because you can't have a party like Labour, which was set up to its historic mission has been to eliminate bigotry and hatred and racism and oppression and exploitation, to have parliamentary representatives who speak like this. And that's why Labour are right to act, but lessons have to be learned, and that has to be the proper vetting of all candidates, including in seats they don't think they're going to win.
OK, good to talk to you. As always, thanks a lot. More now on the suspension of the Labour MP Jared O'Mara amid an investigation into his behaviour. Sophie Evans claims the Sheffield Hallam MP made inappropriate comments towards her earlier this year. Joins us now from Sheffield. Hello to you. Thanks for joining us. You okay?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you.
Okay. Talk to me about what happened.
So basically, in March this year, we were out on a staff night out. There's a bit of an altercation between one of my colleagues and Jared inside the club where he was DJing at West Street Live in Sheffield. We all kind of stepped outside. I was talking to him, obviously on a level, trying to find out kind of what happened. And then one of his bouncers interjected and said that I'd said that he had a problem with me because I wouldn't sleep with him, which she'd overheard me say to my colleagues as a joke because I was trying to kind of lighten the mood of the situation. And then he just flipped and said the abusive comments to me, which obviously I can't really repeat because they're not really broadcastable.
What can you tell us about what he said? Obviously, you know, we are on telly, but what did he say without being too blunt, and how did it make you feel?
It was along the lines of I wouldn't touch you with a barge pole, but instead of saying barge pole, he used like a transphobic slur, and he called me ugly and then swore at me. So,
do you think?
Yeah.
Was he sober?
I'm not sure. I'd had a drink obviously because we were on a staff night out, but obviously he was working like DJing, so I don't know whether he has a drink when he's DJing or not. I don't know. He didn't seem drunk to me, but
he was angry.
I don't know.
He was obviously angry, wasn't he, Sophie? You were angry as well.
Yeah.
There was a lot of tension in that room. Do you think he really meant what he was saying?
Yeah, I do. He just flipped. Would not hear me out. He just flipped, and I think coupled with, you know, the allegations that have come out recently, and things that he has said in the past as well. Obviously, the song he wrote entitled "I Wish I Were a Misogynist." Yeah, I think he did. If he didn't mean it and it was a mistake, then why hasn't he apologised already? Because I've brought this to light in June when I found out that he got elected as an MP, and he's denied it since June.
Yeah, I think that's the point, isn't it, Sophie? He said that he didn't say it, so it's your word against his, I suppose. Were other people there? Did other people hear what he said?
The two colleagues I was with were there, but they didn't hear what I said because one of my colleagues was on the phone to the police, having just been hit in the face by one of Jared's bouncers, and the other colleague was with her, kind of trying to calm her down, make sure she was all right. So they were a little bit back from it. The only people who heard it were Jared's friends. So, and after he went back into the club, they started laying into me, saying kind of quite nasty things to me as well. So, yeah, it is my word against his.
And so it's tricky, isn't it, then? Because it's always an issue, isn't it, when it's one person's word against another person's word. What made you feel strongly enough to want to bring it to the public's attention? Because, of course, it does look as though it could quite possibly ruin his political career.
Yeah, I've said in quite a few interviews I've done today, I never intended to ruin his political career. I don't want to ruin his political career. All I ever wanted was an apology and for him to acknowledge what he's done and just to say sorry. But now it's not enough for him to say sorry for what he said to me. I want him to apologise for calling me a liar since June. I want him to acknowledge what he said, and I want him to apologise for that and for lying about it. I think, yeah, it is my word against his, but I think if you kind of look at the evidence and kind of look at what other things are coming out that he said, is it so far-fetched that he would have said this to me? No, I don't think so, and I don't think anyone else who's thinking logically would think so either. It is my word against his. I've got absolutely nothing to gain from lying about this, and probably quite a lot to lose if I was lying. So, yeah.
And he hasn't apologised. As you know, he's actually said that you've made the whole thing up. That must be incredibly hurtful for you. If he's watching this afternoon, what would you want to say to him?
I just want to say I don't understand why you won't just apologise. If you're denying the exact words that you said, then at least acknowledge that you did say something and that there was an altercation. At least acknowledge some kind of altercation. At the very least, acknowledge that.
There must be CCTV footage of that, is there?
I'm not sure. There was CCTV footage from inside the club when his bouncers sort of kind of attacked my female friend in like kind of ruckus, but obviously that's a separate incident. I don't think there's any CCTV footage from outside the club. I'm not sure.
Yeah, just to clarify, Sophie, I mean, I'm just going to throw in an alleged there as far as your friend's concerned, just so the lawyers are happy, because obviously I wasn't there at the time. How challenging has it been for you? Because obviously you've been in the public spotlight, haven't you, over the last few days? He's got a lot of friends, he's got a lot of supporters, he's got a lot of people who think that he is a good MP and an all-round good egg who was previously a misogynist and a racist, and he isn't anymore. What sort of aggravation has that caused for you?
To be honest, I've just had an overwhelming amount of support on Twitter, on all social media, on, you know, people I've been speaking to and stuff. I've not really had much negativity, which I was very surprised at. I've had a few negative comments, obviously, but that just comes with it. I knew that was going to happen. I knew that was going to happen, or I wouldn't have said anything in the first place. I just think it's a real shame that because of these negative comments, there are other women and, you know, also men, there are other people out there that have, you know, suffered like verbal abuse, just physical abuse at the hands of people who, you know, like MPs or other like prominent people who maybe wouldn't say something because they fear the backlash.
Okay. I wonder what you say to those people, Sophie, and I'm just putting it out there, interesting to hear what you think, who say, you know what, it's just a few words, doesn't really matter.
What, the people that say it's just a few words that he said to me?
Yeah.
I don't think that's the point. I think the fact that he was elected as an MP 3 months after he screamed abuse in my face is the point. I think if you know that you're going to be, you know, if you know you're running for MP or, you know, you want a position of such power, I think don't act like that anyway. It's not right to act like that anyway, but I just think, I can't fathom it how he thinks how he has acted to then go on and be an MP. It's not okay. It's not okay to act like that.
Yeah, I understand, Sophie. I completely understand what you're saying. And sadly, I mean, I'd love to talk to you for much longer, but we don't have much more time. But I do want to know what you think should happen to him now. What would you be comfortable with? Would it be a public apology, or do you think that he has been so offensive to you and therefore to other women and people who he may or may not have treated in a similar way in the past, that actually he shouldn't really be representing Sheffield Hallam anymore? I
wouldn't want necessarily a public apology. This was never about getting myself in the spotlight or gaining infamy or anything like that. If he kind of apologised and did it in private, yeah, I would kind of be willing to kind of talk to him. But I think he's proved that he's not fit to be an MP. I just don't think he has a clue what he's doing. I don't think, these are my opinions, I've said them before, I don't think he's fit to be an MP at all.
And what would you say as a result to Mr Corbyn then, who, you know, I suppose has to look at making those decisions along with the chairman of the party in Sheffield Hallam?
I think Jared O'Mara is embarrassing the Labour Party, and I think Jeremy Corbyn should really consider that. And that's that.
Okay, Sophie. Understand how challenging it is for you to keep talking about this, but we do appreciate you taking the time. It's such a challenge on live telly as well. Thanks very much, Sophie. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now here, the Labour Party has tonight confirmed to Channel 4 News that newly suspended MP Jared O'Mara was not interviewed before he became a candidate in the Sheffield Hallam constituency at the election. Mr O'Mara lost the Labour whip today after being accused of verbally abusing a local woman earlier this year, and a string of historic sexist and homophobic online comments emerged. He vehemently denies the latest allegations and says he has been on a journey of education since making his original comments on the social media. A warning now, there is strong language in this report from Sheffield from our political correspondent Michael Crick.
Jared O'Mara with his supporters in Sheffield Hallam the day after pulling off the big coup of election night, beating Nick Clegg in a seat Labour's never held before. Yet remarkably, we've learned tonight Labour never interviewed O'Mara to become their candidate. Because Hallam wasn't a Labour seat, he was simply picked by a regional party committee who liked his CV. Now it's alleged that weeks before the election, at this Sheffield bar which O'Mara used to run, he called a woman an ugly five-letter word starting with B. O'Mara strongly denies that, but she's adamant.
He basically said, I wouldn't touch you with a barge pole, and called me a manky, derogatory word, but he didn't say barge pole, he used transphobic language, and obviously swore as well, and was just violent, transphobic, misogynistic and aggressive.
The inquiry which Labour set up yesterday into those allegations against O'Mara wasn't enough to ease the pressure. So this morning, Labour suspended O'Mara as one of their MPs, and he'll now sit as an independent.
New information has come to light, so quite rightfully, the Labour Party has acted swiftly. He's been suspended, the whip has been withdrawn, there will be an investigation, and it's the same with anyone. If they haven't abided by the rules of the Labour Party, there will be sanctions applied.
That eased things a bit for Labour at question time, but Theresa May still said this.
All of us in this House should have due care and attention to the way in which we refer to other people, and should show women in public life the respect that they deserve.
Voters in Sheffield Hallam welcomed Labour's suspension of an MP who hasn't exactly set the world on fire until now.
If you put yourself up to be in the public domain, you've got to stand by what you say. You don't get a second chance. So 15 years ago, he might have still been learning, but he should have learned something by now, shouldn't he?
Because the latest stuff is allegedly only in March, although he denies it.
Yeah, well, if it's March, that's why I'm saying he should be ousted out, you know.
Has he been a good MP?
No. I don't know what he's done, if anything.
He hasn't spoken in the House of Commons yet.
No. And he's been in, what?
5 months?
5 months and done nothing. Said nothing. Got his money, though.
And others could get into similar trouble, warns this MP.
There's a lot more to come out in Parliament, and the systems for dealing with it in Parliament are hopeless. The Labour Party systems historically have been hopeless. I am getting more confidence that the Labour Party now is capable of handling these things, and this is going to be a good test case.
O'Mara's campaign last spring was strongly backed by the left-wing group Momentum. But if he was to quit and cause a by-election here, it might turn the momentum back towards the Lib Dems.
Well, the Sheffield Hallam Labour Party is not meeting until Friday, but Momentum, whom I just mentioned, are actually holding their local branch meeting here in the church behind me right now. Mr O'Mara is not officially on the agenda, but it'd be astonishing if they weren't to be discussing his behaviour behind the scenes. And the fascinating question is how he was chosen in the first place. Because this wasn't a Labour seat, Labour simply had a committee of about half a dozen people meeting regionally, going through hundreds of CVs and picking out the most suitable in each seat. No vetting, no questioning, no speeches, no meeting the local members. And the remarkable thing is that the same process seems to have occurred in the 3 dozen or so other seats that Labour took at the election from other parties. In which case, it wouldn't be surprising if 1 or 2 other problems were to arise with some of the other people who unexpectedly became MPs in June.
Michael Crick.